Hi, welcome to Moyna Bass Fishes, and I'm Jim Moyna, your Journeyman Tournament Bass Pro. All right, this is the recap of the 2022 MLF Tacklewarehouse Pro Circuit on Lake Champlain here at the end of July, beginning of August. Today is day 4. As you can see, I am on shore in day 4, which means I did not qualify for the final day, which you got to be in the top 10 to fish today. I did qualify for day 3. The top 50 qualified for day 3. I went into day 3 in 19th place position. After days 3 fishing, my final placement was 25th place, and this is out of 154 anglers, I believe. So that's what it was. You walk out of here with a paycheck. You walk out of here with more fishing knowledge. You walk out of here with another life experience, positive life experience. So, and I'm not leaving here yet, because I got another tournament here next week. It's in the Major League Fishing's Toyota Series, which is the series. It's the entry series into the pro circuit. So it's in essence I'm fishing down one level, if you want to call it that. But it'll be good competition. A lot of really good locals that fish out here a lot and know what to do, know how to catch them. So by any means, it'll be good competition. All right, so let's talk about this tournament. Let's talk about my strategies. Talk about my presentations, and what and how I went about this. I've been coming to Lake Champlain since 1997. It seems I get here about every 3 years or so for a tournament. So I do have some background. I do have some history on this body of water. With that said, in my 2 best finishes, or most of my good finishes, I always seem to have some largemouths in my bag. My 2 best finishes are 3rd places, and in each of those bags I had some largemouths. So coming here, I'm thinking, yeah, I better figure out some largemouths. So was kind of the center point. And where you want a largemouth fish, that can vary, because they can come from different parts of the lake. I just decided I didn't want to go down to Ticonderoga. I wanted to fish on the upper end, so Missisquoi Bay was going to be my target area for largemouths. We get 2 days of practice. I spent all of the first day up in Missisquoi Bay and in the northern part of the inland sea. So, and the way the day unfolded is, well, for one thing, the water's a lot more clear than what it used to be up there. It used to have some little bit of algae bloom to it, a little bit of turbidity, and that's just not the case anymore. I don't know if it's the zebra mussels have cleared it up there or what, but just not what you see. You see the water's much more clear up there, and the fish really don't set up the same as they did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it was kind of a struggle to find them. However, I did find some largemouths. I didn't find that many, but I did find some. And I also found some smallies up there. So, and let's just set the table. My minimum goal was to get enough points in this tournament so that I could move on and qualify for the championship on the St. Lawrence River here in a couple weeks. Because this was the 6th and final regular season tournament in the pro circuit. So, and where I was standing in the points, which was 34th going into this, you have to be in the top 48. I felt like, after doing some math and averaging out the points through the tournaments thus far, I felt like a 90th place finish was basically a 95% chance I would have enough points to qualify. 90th place isn't a very aspiring goal, isn't a very challenging or aggressive goal, so obviously you're looking for more than that, but that was the minimum. I mean, at least do that. You know, then the next goal above that is make the money. Then, of course, the goal above that is to make the top 10, and the goal above that is to win the tournament. So, I felt like the Missisquoi Bay, the largemouth program, I just felt like, and then trying to develop some smallmouths up in that end of the lake, to me that felt like a reasonable plan to get into fish and get into, and I could at least, it give me the best opportunity to meet my very minimum goals and still have it uncapped as far as the potential. So, because in Missisquoi Bay, you can run into some really big largemouths in there. And that's what happened on day one of practice. I caught, out of a weed patch the size of my Ranger boat here, I caught a largemouth that was seriously like 6 to 7 pounds. Just a really, really, one of the biggest largemouths I've ever caught out of Champlain. Beautiful fish, just a tank. And these Champlain largemouths are just, they're short and stubby. It's just crazy looking largemouth. So, and when I caught that just like sealed my belief in that I was doing the right thing. I had the right strategy. And I went on to find a couple other more largemouth spots where I felt confident about getting more largemouths. In fact, one place, there was one weed patch, one weed area I was fishing where I reeled in a 3.5 pounder, and there was 3 other quality largemouths chasing that fish in. So I knew I was onto a group of fish there. And at this time of season, this time of year, they're probably not going to move. Smallmouths are notorious for moving. Largemouths at this time of year, under these conditions, not so much. They're probably going to stay there. So I felt good about that. I had another largemouth area where I caught a few randoms. I had then the train trestle up there by Missisquoi Bay. I caught some largemouths off of that and smallmouths, and there were a ton of suspended smallmouths on that train trestle. They were hard to catch. And then if you did hook one, you had to fight them through the pillars and pilings. So there was the risk of them wrapping around one of those pilings and then cutting your line on a zebra mussel that'd be attached to the piling. So that just seemed like such a dicey game getting in around that train trestle. So there were fish there. And the largemouths I caught, I think the biggest one was maybe 3 1/4 that I caught. Otherwise, they're kind of small. And same with the smallmouth. The biggest was like 3 1/4. So even though there was fish there, it wasn't the most exciting thing in the world. Then I spent a little time in the northern end there of the inland sea, just south of Missisquoi Bay. Ran into some smallies there, some decent ones, 3 to 3.5ers. And that was my day one. Day two, I decided to go in the inland sea and try to develop the smallmouth. It didn't go well. I struggled most of the day. I caught one really good 4-pound pluser about midday, and then in the evening I finally figured out what I needed to do and how to catch them, and it may be that the fish were just turned on much better in the evening. So I felt a lot better by evening time about what I had going. And all this stuff was in the northern half because I already had Missisquoi Bay. I knew I was going to fish up there. So I wanted so on day two, I wanted everything I was going to search for and look at was going to be not too far off the route to Missisquoi Bay. That way you save time, especially if the wind comes up, you're not having to deal with having to run big rollers to other sections of the lake. To me, it just makes sense. You want to get in an area of the lake, and that's where you're home. You don't want to fish this basin and that basin over in this basin. You want to just pick one part of the basin, figure that out, and make it your home for the tournament. So that's what I did. All right, so now let's talk about day one of the tournament. I started on a smallmouth spot, and it was kind of an area, maybe a 10 acre area, 10 acre area size, in size, about the size of 10 acres. there was smallies all over in practice, and they were still there. I had a limit probably in an hour and a half, and then after another half hour of it, I had two nice smallies that were like 3.5 pounders, maybe even 3 3/4, and then and then the others were like 3 pounders. So that all came together pretty good. I was happy about that, and I left them, right? I'm like, I'll come back to them if I need them. I'll give them a little break, but there was still fish on my Lowrance active target. I was still seeing fish. They were still out there. I figured, well, I'll just come back to them later. Let them give them a chance to rest, recoup, because the ones that I was still seeing, they weren't chasing, they weren't too interested in my baits. They kind of look at them, kind of wouldn't. So I'm like, all right, we can just let them rest, let them kind of just get reconditioned to the natural occurrence of life for them, and then I'll come back and surprise their ass later. So now I'm going to go to my largemouth stuff. I got this decent smallie bag, including two nice ones that I'm super happy to have. So I'm like, all right, let's go to where I caught the 6 to 7 pounder, which was the weed patch the size of my boat. Go there, nothing. Okay, figures, whatever. Then I go to my other largemouth area, and I work it around, not much happening. And then I catch one, call up, and then I catch a couple more. I think I made one more call out of that mess. So I'm, working on a bag, building it up, and then I catch a 4 pounder there. So now I got a decent bag, and I still have one largemouth area to go where I had the followers, where I caught the one and followed it and then never made another cast. So I still have that, but in the back of my mind, I'm like concerned about fish management. I need fish for 3 more days, okay? I need fish for Tuesday, or the second day, the third day, and the last day if I get there. So I'm like, you know what? I've got a decent bag, and not a top 10 bag, not a great bag, but a decent bag. Let's just leave those, and let's just go out to my inland seas. Let's go out to the smallies again and try to work with those a little bit, and then maybe then also go look for, just practice some new largemouth water. So that's what it is. So actually I practiced the new largemouth water first, hunted around a whole bunch, ended up finally catching one largemouth, and it actually called. It was a small call, maybe an ounce, maybe a couple of, balance beam just barely tipped, It wasn't the balance beam that just goes like this. It just kind of went like this, wobble a little bit. So to me, that's like a 1 to 2 ounce call, but it was a call. Very cool. The only fish I caught there. It was really windy in that spot, and I caught it on the chatterbait, and threw that chatterbait all over the place around there, and never had another bite. But hey, got a call. So that was my day one. Well, then I went into the inland sea, fished like 2 smallie spots, caught 2 small ones that didn't help, and then went to weigh in at 18.3, 32nd place. All right, now day 2. I'm gonna start exactly where I started the day before, where I got a decent bag of smallies, including the 2 really good ones. I go there, and something has changed, because I am not seeing fish on the Lowrance active target at all. Just really not seeing them, period. And my fishing's confirming that they're not stuck on the bottom either, because I'm not getting bites. I'm not seeing them. I'm working it, and really after an hour and a half of working this area, I have like a 14-incher in my live well, and then I have about a 3 pounder in my live well. So, and the 3 pounder's like, hey, nice, that's one fish towards my goal of finishing 90th or better, but it's not a fish towards my goal of making, top 50, making top 10. So, in my mind, I'm still got a lot of fish to catch. Now it's time to go to my largemouth stuff. First place I go is the weed patch the size of my boat. Throw in there with this. No, not that. Wrong. Same bait, just different setup. This bait, this is the Nico rig. There's a weight inserted into the head of this curly tail worm. Throw in there, catch a 410. It was quite the battle too. Quite the battle. Because that's a light rod, that's a light line. What is it? It's 8 pounds. I throw into this weed patch, like right into the center of it. There's a hole right in the center of it. Throw in there, and this is where I caught the 6 to 7 pounder, which was on an all-terrain jig, by the way, in practice. Throw in there, hook this fish like after about 3 seconds, and I pull him through some of the weeds, and I get him clear of the weeds, but he's such a brute, this fish, that he pulls me, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, Jim, whatever you do, don't let him get back into that weed patch. For one, I don't want to tear up any more of those weeds to like ruin the spot for any future fish to want to draw into it. And then two, you know, I don't want him to get into that weed patch so that he tears off. So what happens? He gets back into that weed patch. I mean, and I was leaning on him extra hard, more than I like to with 8-pound tests, but he got back in there anyhow. And the reason why I have 8-pound tests, because I'm using that same rig on the smallies. Like my smallie spot in the morning, I'm using that rig right there to catch a lot of those fish. So I do have another Nika rig with 12-pound line with a different hook, different setup. I'll show you that in a minute. But anyways, that was the rig I chose for that cast, and the fish has now got me buried in them weeds. And I'm concerned that he's not even on there. And now I'm like having to pull really hard just to try to move the fish out of the weeds. And I feel a couple wiggles, and those wiggles like knocked themselves free. And now I'm just slowly dragging this glob of weeds and fish to the boat. And as you know, when a fish is covered in weeds, as you drag them, they just quit fighting for some reason. Whether it's a northern or a bass, they just kind of give up. I don't know why that is, but I kind of like it that way. So I bring them in, get the net under them, get them in the boat. It's a really beautiful largemouth. And then when I go to unhook it, seriously, the hook was holding on to just a thread of skin. There was like the skin had pulled away, like there was like a hole that big, and the hook was just like right in that hole. I was so close to not getting that fish. It's spooky how close I was not to getting that fish. So, but now I've got this 410, and the reason why I know it's 410 because later at weigh-in I weighed that fish individually, and it was 410. So I got this 410, I got this smallie, that's 3 1/4, and then I got a 14-incher. Now I go to my largemouth spot that this other largemouth spot that I fished on day one and caught a few. Well, I go over there, I think I caught like 4 fish over there, maybe even 5. No, you know, like the day before, one was a 4-pounder. I didn't get any of those. They were all like 2.5 to 3 1/4, maybe a 3.5 at the biggest. I think I did get one 3.5 maybe out of there. But after fishing that spot, now I'm feeling good about fishing, making the top 50. Okay, I know I've made my minimum goal of 90th place. Okay, I know I've got that with these fish. I'm pretty sure I got the top 50 for these fish. So now I'm like, and I can't catch any more fish out of the spot. I've exhausted. And then what did I use? What was I using over there? This bait. This is a drop shot. Let me untangle this for you. And maybe I won't untangle it. Oh my gosh, you guys don't have time for this. Alright, well, this has been, I haven't even looked at it since the rough boat ride yesterday. And sometimes these drop shots get kind of, and even though I had it around that I had it tied, the sinker even tied to the rod, but by tied I mean with a hairband. So I don't know how this came to be, unless if I put it away like this, because being in a rush and that to get back, that's very possible. All right, so here's the drop shot. That worm, that is the Billy Rub Baits Tricky D. You may have seen that before. If you watched one of my Sam Rayburn videos in the Toyota series, you saw me talk about this worm, okay? And here I am talking about it again. It came through with some fish there on that largemouth spot. Also caught one on that spot. I think I caught a couple on that. The first one I caught was on this. This is the 410 bait, the one I caught 410 on, and I also caught one there on that second largemouth spot. And also, this caught one of them. This is another Nico rig. It's got the lead inserted in the end of it here. Wacky rig. This is Billy Rub stickworm, which I think he just poured these just for private use. He doesn't have those on the market. But anyhow, that's what I caught those on. So now I've got it, like I said, I got the decent bag, and I still have my other largemouth spot. I didn't go to it on day one. I saved it for fish management, but now I feel like, you know, after being in 32nd yesterday, with what I got in so far, I'm like, I'm probably still going to be in 32nd. You know, not much better. And I really need to close the distance to 10th place. So I'm like, you know what? I've got to utilize this other largemouth spot. So I go over there. I caught 3 largemouths. The first one was once again on this bait, and that one I weighed at the weigh-in, and that one weighed 4.7. Also, and the other 2 fish I caught over there were on the Tricky D drop shot, and there's the sinker I was using for the drop shot. It just pinches on the line. It's called the bull shot, I think it's called. It's like just pinches on there. They're cheap. They're not tungsten. If I'm flipping weeds with it, I might as well go with the cheap stuff. Especially when I'm in Minnesota, because pike will steal your tungsten stuff all the time. And of course, I'm price conscious, tight ass cheap, however you want to say it. I'm going to use lead in that situation. When I'm smallie fishing, I tend to go with the tungsten. Anyhow, or spotted bass fishing. When I'm going really finessey, tungsten, I want that smaller bait, smaller sinker. But in the application for that, didn't have to worry about it. Okay, so now I got this bag that I'm figuring it's bigger than my day one bag, so I know I'm going to move up, and I also got about 3 hours left. So rather than re-rotate through the same stuff I've already fished, and even though I haven't been to that train trestle yet, I'm like, you know what, I never caught a big one there anyways, I'm not going there. So I'm like, well, let's just go out and let's go smallmouth fishing and just recheck some of the smallmouth stuff from out in the inland sea. Just to touch bases with it, with the weather conditions the way they were. It was cloudy, windy. Just see what I could do. So I go out there. First place I pull up to on my waypoint, nothing's going on. There's a guy about 300 yards away. I see him catch one. I'm not going to drift over to where he is and fish there. That's not what I do. My waypoint's where I'm at, and I fish around that. Not only do I fish that waypoint, but I do fish kind of around it a little bit. Nothing. And I'm like, why were these fish even here? And then I'm just, so that's telling me these fish are just roaming around. This is not a waypoint type of spot. This is a roaming spot. You gotta just track these fish down as they roll on that particular piece of structure. The next waypoint I got is a big boulder, big underwater boulder. Your Lawrence, when your Lawrence target strikes it, it just lights up the bottom. It's just this big monument. It's one of these, I call them monuments. It's a monument boulder. So, once again, I take this Nico Rig Curl Tail worm. I got my Lawrence active target locked in on this boulder. Throw my bait out there. My target's telling me it's 40 feet out. Throw the bait 40 feet out. 2 boat lengths is what I figured. I see the bait go down. And all I'm seeing is a boulder, but out from the image of the boulder, out comes this mark, and the two meet together. Fish on. It's not a smallmouth, it's a largemouth. Out here in the smallie water, it's a largemouth. And I just swing it in the boat, not thinking much of it. And then I'm like, God dang, that thing just might help me. So pull out the calling beams, and sure enough, it wasn't much of a help. I mean, it just barely teetered the wave beam one way. And when it's like that, when I barely teetering it one way, this is a little tip, I always take the fish off of each side and switch them and see if it still teeters towards the same fish. Or was it perhaps the balance beam isn't quite right or something, but the balance beam seems to be true. It's still teetered, even with the fish switch sides, it's still slightly teetered towards the fish I just caught, the largemouth I just caught in a smallie spot. So it was a call of some kind. So anyways, fished a bunch more. I caught like 13-inch smallmouth. You know, I tried like 3 or 4 other waypoints I had. Not much luck. Kind of killed my confidence a little bit for that area, even though, and there was a lot of pressure, a lot of fishing pressure around there, which kind of hurt my confidence a little bit too. The spot I wanted to get on, I couldn't, because guys were there. I mean, even when I went past that spot at the beginning of the day, I was thinking about starting there, and there was already somebody there, and I was boat 47. So anyhow, so that was my day. 19-2 put me in 19th place, just not far out of 10th place. I figured a 20-pound bag, I still needed my best bag of the tournament to make the top 10, which would have been probably like a 20-pound bag, but very possible, especially if I can track down that 6 to 7 pounder I caught in practice, which I didn't traumatize that fish at all. He was hooked, just right in a, non-traumatizing part of his outer lip. I never took him out of the water. I unhooked him right at the boat while he's still in the water. He unhooked really easy. So the fish, he couldn't have been too traumatized. God, what a fish though, beautiful fish. But anyways, so it's a strategy now is to basically kind of just rewind and redo what I did on day 2. Even though my starting smallmouth spot didn't do very well on day 2, that's where I decided to go again, because to me it's a kind of thing where the fish can just roam back into it. They can just reappear. So I start there. There was no reappearance of anything. I did have one bite. He came off after about a second, and just, even on day 1 when I was catching them in that area, I even caught some small largemouths, small, like 13, 14-inch largemouths. And on day 2, I didn't even catch those. Day 3, I didn't catch those, nor did I catch any of the smallies. So for whatever reason, it really changed up. Somehow those fish either re-left the area or they repositioned not far from there. I did kind of try to wander off of the area a little bit and relocate them. Could not do it. So on that 3rd day, after nearly 2 hours of fishing, and maybe not quite that long, an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, I still had no fish. And then I'm like, well, I'm just gonna have to fish largemouths and just keep fishing those until I exhaust those. So so rather than going straight to my weed patch the size of my boat, I pull up maybe 50 yards shy of it and start fishing. And I was just weighing a chatterbait, and I caught my first fish. It was a largemouth, 2 3/4-ish, 2.5, 2 3/4-ish. Then I keep throwing that chatterbait, get myself up to the weed patch, throw to the weed patch, throw the weed patch, throw the weed patch, throw the weed patch, throw the weed patch. Nothing. The chatterbait, by the way, here's the, it's not. Sorry, it's not a chatterbait. It's a bladed jig. Because it is not the chatterbait. This is actually a thunder cricket. I don't know which one's whether thunder cricket's better bait or a chatterbait. Jackhammer's better bait. I don't know, but there it is. It's kind of a brownish, with a little red in there. It's got a ultra vibe craw on there with one leg, and a lot of perch. So I'm thinking, this has got kind of a perchy look to it. So that's why I picked it, and it seemed to do all right. Because this is also the same chatterbait that on day one I caught my last callfish while I was basically practice fishing or trying to find new largemouths. So anyhow, that's the chatterbait, thunder cricket. All right, so the weed patch. So now I go to my next largemouth spot, and I don't get anything there. The previous day I got the previous 2 days I'd gotten fish there, and now I got nothing. So rather than pulling off of the waypoint, I decided to just fish around in that area and maybe try to maybe they repositioned. We got a different wind direction. The wind's blowing in there a little firmer. Water's a little more dirty. Maybe they've repositioned in this area. So I fish around in the area, and I decided to pick this bait up, which I hadn't caught a fish on this all week because I haven't hardly used it. In fact, I never fished this in practice. I rigged it up the night before day one. Never even threw. I don't even think I threw it until the third day. Yeah, I never even threw this bait. But this is the all-terrain tackle AT jig. This is an aftermarket skirt I got on here. This is not a stock skirt, but it's like a brown blue kind of a color. And then the trailer on here, I got to show you that. It's the Billy Rub craw trailer. The name of this craw trailer eludes my mind right now, but there it is. And I haven't used this craw trailer that much, but after what I'm seeing with it now, I'm becoming more and more of a believer. Because I remember at Sam Rayburn earlier this year, I caught like an 8 to 9 pounder on a jig with this trailer on there, and I didn't use it much. Oh no. Did this just shut off? Okay, this might be shutting off pretty quick. So anyways, that jig. So then I caught a smallie on that jig, just fishing that area. Just one. I tried the chatterbait, I tried just fishing around, just caught that one. So then now I gotta go to my other largemouth area where I got 3 the day before, never fished on day one because I was saving it. And in practice, I caught one and had 3 good ones, really good ones. Follow up the one I hooked. I go over there. I start short of this juice, and over near the juice, I'm seeing like fish activity. So I'm like, I'm getting so excited. I'm like, okay. I even said to my Marshall, I said, you know what? It is going to go down. It's going to go down when I get over there. So I'm seeing this fish activity. So I worked my way over to this waypoint. I get to the waypoint. I'm fishing the waypoint area, and I'm working, nothing's happening. About every 5 minutes, I see, I'll hear something. Out of the corner of my eye, I'll see a fish roll. I can't, I finally catch one on this bait, this Nico rig. It's like a 2 3/4. And I'm throwing top waters, I'm throwing jigs, I'm throwing Nico rigs, I'm throwing all this stuff. Can't get nothing. Then finally, I'm looking right where I'm looking at the water. One of these fish rolls again, and it's almost like I've seen, it's almost like big smallmouths rolling on mayflies is what I'm seeing. And what it was is a giant, what in Minnesota we call dogfish. Okay, other places are called greno, mudfish, bowfin, amia calva. That's what these are. And Missisquoi Bay is notoriously loaded with these things. It didn't even occur to me, but now that I saw that, I'm like, oh yes, of course, because not only is Missisquoi, I've seen this before in other lakes, where they'll just get in a certain weed bed and they'll like school in a weed bed and they'll just roll on things. I've seen this before, other lakes, other places. Missisquoi Bay is loaded with these things. So it's like, God, why didn't I think of it sooner? Of course, that's what these are. Because I couldn't catch. I mean, I'd see this activity and it was getting frustrating. I'm like, gosh, I know they're here. There's stuff happening, but it was not even the right species at all. In fact, I started thinking, God, what else could these be? Because surely I would have caught one of them, but if they were smallmouth or largemouth, then like, well, maybe they're big crappies. Northerns usually don't do this, and dogfish was totally not in my mind when it should have been, really. All right, so yeah, I only got that one fish there. So then I said, well, I'll go to the train trestle. Go to the train trestle. I caught 2 fish off the train trestle on this jig right there, and one was like a 3.5 pound largemouth, my biggest fish of the day. The suspended smallies that I saw there in practice were gone. I mean, seriously, I saw like 40, it had to be at least 40 different fish, all suspended in that train trestle in practice. And in the tournament, I saw maybe like 3 or 4, and that was it. So that was a disappointment. God, I hope this is making sense to you guys. But anyway, so then I tried to re-rotate through things, and I caught one more on my re-rotation, added another half pound. I ended up with 16.3 for the last day. Went from 19th place to 25th place. And that was my day. That was my tournament. That's why I'm sitting here and not competing right now on day 4. But in hindsight, I'm not too upset about my finish. It would have been nice to make the top 10. What could I have done different? I don't know. I think it has to start with having more confidence on the smallmouth water. And I will be having a Toyota. I'll be competing in a tournament here next week in the MLF Toyota Series. So I'll have a week to kind of hunt around, and as it turns out, a lot of these 20-pound bags are smallmouth bags that guys are bringing in. So apparently, I probably really should be looking at smallmouth exclusively and just scrap the largemouth. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I got a week to put something together, and that I will do. And the one last thing I'll say. And see, this is the thing I wanted to say that kind of threw me off a moment ago, is when I did get that 19-pound bag on day 2, I still had like 3 hours left to fish. And I told you I caught that one largemouth on a smallmouth spot, but then after that, shortly after that, and I still had like 2 hours left, and I went practicing for largemouths in new places, which to me was a good strategy, and here's why. Because by practicing on, if I could find another group of largemouths, well, that would be monumental for my days 3 fishing and days 4 fishing. But it never happened. That was it just didn't occur, didn't happen, didn't cull up, didn't catch any more fish. I think I caught like 2 tiny fish in that last couple hours when I was looking for some killer largemouths. But okay, that's the extent of it. Have I shown all these baits? No, I haven't shown all these baits. Okay, here's a couple baits. These are the 2 baits I caught my big smallies on day 1 on my starting spot. You know, I caught fish on this on the starting spot, But it turns out the two biggest ones fell for this swim bait. That's an ultra terrain tackle smallie smasher with a 2.8 Kitech, and then this marabou jig here. In both situations, I had the fish located on my Lowrance active target, and they ignored this. They showed slight interest in it, but they didn't eat it. So then that led me to believe I better pick up some other baits. And I actually caught a few fish on this swim bait that morning. And then the only fish I caught on this was a good one that counted. 3.5, 3 3/4. Okay, that's my Lake Champlain recap. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you learned something. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but man, I've concluded enough in here. If I forgot something, oh well, next time. Over.